Hello, and welcome to this episode of Manufacturing Matters, where we talk about the technology and trends that are affecting manufacturing today. I'm Aaron Hand. I'm with Tech B2B Marketing, and I'm here with my colleague, Dan McCarthy.
Hello.
We're joined today by Ted Larson, CEO and co-founder of OLogic. Welcome, Ted. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. This is great.
So we like to keep the introductions very minimal so that we can hop right into the discussion. But if you would spend a couple minutes just letting our viewers know uh, what OLogic is and kind of the space that you play in predominantly.
Right, so we're a product design firm. We've been around for 20 years. It's hard to believe. We started it in 2005. I would say the three primary markets. We started out mostly in consumer electronics and toys, and then we moved heavy into big like industrial robotics and mobile robots in the mid 2010s. And then in the last 5, 6 years, we've done more like Internet of Things. But either way, it's product design for those kinds of markets and helping people build successful products and get them shipped and out into the market.
Okay, great. I think our plan today is we're going to focus in on the robotics primarily.
Mm-hmm.
And OLogic has really had an array of customers. I think for our followers who know the robotics space well, they're certainly going to be familiar with companies like Fetch Robotics or Plus One Robotics. But you also have some real household names in your lineup. You've worked with companies like Google, NVIDIA, Hasbro. So how do the challenges that startup clients bring to the table differ than some of those bigger established players?
Right. So there's kind of like two kinds of startups that we tend to encounter. We encounter ones that have built a product before and they have a little bit of understanding of what is entailed in that. And then we have other ones that have absolutely no clue how to build a product. And there's a big educational exercise that has to go along to kind of teach them everything that they don't know. And in some cases, those kinds of customers can be really, really great because they really, accept, mentorship and they really want to learn as they go. In others, it can be challenging where maybe they've come out of a large organization. They worked at Apple, they worked somewhere else where they were part of the product development cycle of a product. And then they think they understand what the process is. But, without the infrastructure of one of those big companies making it happen, the process is very, very different when you're trying to do it on your own as a small startup. So trying to educate them, all of these things that you think that are going to happen automatically, they're not. You're going to have to do them yourself. And here's how you're going to have to go through it. So that generally tends to be the big trade-off. And we do, one of our kind of like taglines that we throw around all the time is like, look, building and shipping a product is like climbing Mount Everest, especially like if you're a first-time climber. And the only way you're getting to the top and coming back alive is if you've got a really killer set of Sherpas to carry all your stuff and show you the way. And that's what we feel like we're in that position frequently. So,
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So you do, I've interviewed you just so viewers know, I've interviewed you a couple times recently for a story I was working on. And it's just really interesting to hear some of your war stories from this space. So you work quite a lot in robotics, and there just seems to be a lot that can go wrong there. So especially moving from academic lab to commercial development. Can you share with us kind of some of your recurring horror stories from developers as they try to navigate that transition?
Yeah. So again, like it's in the case of an academic lab. So and I don't like really going out and airing other people's dirty laundry of like people's names or people and things. But
Yeah,
you can go and look. You can go and look through our portfolio and see some of the projects that we worked on, and you can go read some of the news stories that have happened as a result of some of those projects. That sometimes they don't tend to end well when they start in academia. They maybe have a very high profile, charismatic founder who has no problem raising a lot of money. And in academia, they're used to, building a few really good working prototypes, and then publishing a paper, and then that's it. That's all they've got to do. And um, it's a very, very different animal than building a production grade product where you're going to manufacture, tens of thousands of them perhaps, and then, have them all delivered to the customer in good quality working order. And when the customers are happy with the result, right? Like, and, uh, you know, we usually try to encourage people to do a bit of like beta testing and other things to like um, get that market focused feedback built into the product. So academic projects usually don't have any market focused feedback cooked into them. Maybe they do because they did some research with people out in the field, which is great. But surviving contact with the customer and getting that customer review of like what they thought it was uh, before you've really given it to somebody who's like got a more discerning eye as to what to review, like a product reviewer or somebody like that. You'll learn a ton of stuff that you had no idea, about how they're planning on using it. And a lot of customers on the consumer side, they'll do stupid stuff like, and you'll be like, oh, I never could have anticipated they would have tried to do it that way. That makes sense. We need to build in some process or some, you know, things into it to make it, easier to use. And the other item we often find with, again, big charismatic founders, they tend to make big promises to their investors and their customer base that possibly could never be delivered on at any point. And that we're kind of the mindset of like ship a product, get it into the market, get it doing really well, then ship a follow-on product. And in the case of like consumer electronics, the consumer industry gets pretty bored. Like there's, it within 18 months, you need to be shipping something new that is a revision of it or an upgraded version of it or something that offers some new features or capabilities that the prior version didn't have. And that's usually based on customer feedback you got on the first version that you shipped. And that also leads to better customer retention and things. People are more willing to like upgrade or buy the next version because the prior version was so cool and interesting. Now the newer version does something new, So, um, uh, so yeah, so we've got a lot of customers that have had very successful success stories. Those are the ones that I tend to trot out the most and be like, oh, here's how they started. This is how they're evolving.
Right.
And this is how they're improving, what they're doing. So an example of one of our really early customers from, I want to say it's like almost 10 years ago now, we worked on a product from a company called Wonder Workshop. It was a kind of like a children's toy robot that was designed to teach software engineering to kids. And what they did was they really they started out kind of focused more on the home and on families, but then they realized there was a huge opportunity in like schools and curriculum and building curriculum around the robot, and then adding small little add-ons to it to make the new curriculum, and make it more relevant. And they've done tremendously well in just making these small additions, these small features that you can buy, new curriculum that goes with it, and they continue to sell more and more and more of them. And schools and educational people tend to be, I think, the vast majority of their sales these days. So I look at that and I'm like, they did it correctly, and they've been able to sustain themselves over a long period of time. versus other ones, they'll build something really splashy. It'll go really good. They'll raise a big pile of money, but then they really didn't build a market-focused product. And then they're trying to back into how to make it market-focused, but it's kind of too late at that point. And then they can't sustain enough revenue in order to actually be a viable business. They either have to continue to raise money, and in this environmental, in the economy that we're in or whatnot, sometimes we go through these periods where it's very hard to raise money, and then they're stuck. Right. So,
to jump in for a moment. So what you're describing, I mean, it's eye-opening for you to talk about planning 2 moves ahead, particularly after you've released the product. I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier for some of these less experienced companies that might not have the playbook. It sounds like what you're describing is methodologies for project management and for launch, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
UX, UI, testing, all the stuff that, they don't plan ahead. They don't realize just to get the first product off the ground. Do you have a playbook? Does OLogic provide that sort of service? I mean,
we do.
Common mistakes that you could talk about?
We do. I think one of the things that's a common thing, and it's funny, we literally just had this conversation yesterday with a new customer. New customer comes to us with a working prototype. They had the prototype made by some prototyping group in China. They didn't quite end up with what they were hoping for. They needed to evolve it to turn it into something that they can produce, and where it's going to meet more of the needs of what they want to do.
Right.
But there's this issue of like, okay, we're taking the thing that they started with, we're learning the lessons that they learned, because it doesn't matter how you start one of these ventures, right? You go and spend money doing something to get things moving and build a prototype or try to make some handmade thing. There is tons of learning that has happened already. So the first step is to like try to understand what learning happened, what mistakes were made, how do we not repeat any of those mistakes, and how we help them to evolve to a plan that we know will succeed. And then the second piece then is make sure that all the requirements you've sat down and you've thought through. These are all the requirements that this product needs to fulfill based on my knowledge of this market out here. Okay. And I'm going to build a specification for how I'm actually going to achieve those requirements, and what is going to be achieved now versus what are we going to do later.
Right.
And it'll all be based on cost and trade-off and customer need and how many people want it and whatnot. But that kind of analysis, to do that in the very, very beginning, is incredibly valuable. And a lot of people skip all that with this kind of like, if we build it, they will come method. And then maybe some people come, but then they can never get to the next step.
Right.
Because they've built this thing that's highly constrained and where they didn't really match the requirements of what they constructed to what the market demanded or wanted, and and you got to do a little bit of market research. So in our case, our playbook is, first step is like really good requirements documentation, sit down, think it through, a really good specification for how we're going to meet those requirements with tech or engineering or whatever. What items are we going to address now? What items we're going to leave to later? And then we produce some kind of like really crude MVP that's that kind of first go at it. And then put it in front of some kind of customer that may, that would use it. Okay. And get a sense of like, well, how do they interact with it? What happens? Right. And what kinds of things are we missing? Yeah, but you're doing it with that early thing. Think about it like a focus group. Think about putting it in front of people that aren't your friends and family, because those people are going to lie. They're going to tell you, oh, it's great. Everybody wants one of these. Don't take it to that. Take it, freaking, if you're a college student and you're doing it, go set up a table in the quad with the thing and say, come try this thing and tell me what you think. Right. That kind of stuff. You'll learn so much from that brief interaction with your thing, and then talking them through about what it's supposed to do and what value it adds. Then after you've done that, you bake all that back in, and then you build your actual first prototype. And that first prototype that you build, in our case, we build it with this intent that that thing is going to get made in a factory somewhere down the road. It is not just the first prototype of a thing that may get thrown away and completely started over. So you're kind of putting a stake in the ground that you're going to follow a path to a factory to build. And that's kind of our methodology. And we've been very successful with that. We've shipped hundreds of products that way. And in some cases too, we're not doing the whole thing. Like maybe they did a bunch of work already. Maybe they even have a product in the market and they're looking to do like a 2.0 product, and they're really unhappy with how they went about doing the 1.0 product, and they need fresh perspective on like how to do this better this next time so they'll have a better outcome. So we have a couple of customers where they're already shipping products in other markets and they're wanting to build a new one, but they're coming to us to help them do it. So yeah, a lot of that. I would say we definitely have a lot of process that we bring to the puzzle because we've got 20 years of experience doing it. And then we share that process heavily with our customers on like how, what are the steps to get to where you want to go, and what are the holes that we identify that you're missing.
I did want to get back to what you were saying about, kind of introducing some new cool things to the market as you go along. And you do have the consumers in particular who want to get that new phone every year or two.
Mm-hmm.
But I would think it's a considerably different story if you're selling a robot to a manufacturer. For example, do you have that same kind of iteration cycle?
Yeah. So, well, this is another interesting thing. Like when you think about how robot companies' business models work in comparison to consumer business models, right? Consumer business models usually are you build a product, you make a big pile of them, you sell them to individual consumers, they purchase them. Maybe there's some kind of an online component. The hot thing these days is there's some kind of an online component to drive engagement with it. And then maybe there's even a subscription for a premium version of it. Even your my sous vide cooker, right, in my kitchen, right, I buy it, but then I can sign up for their online thing and I can get access to a much better database of recipes or things to make it do things, or I can choose to use the free version, which maybe that's all I want, right? So there's a lot of people wanting to build kind of like this data and analytics platform piece behind the gizmo. I would say that a lot of consumer products are moving towards that allows them to get AI and things into their product where maybe they wouldn't have been able to in the past. And then on the robot side, that business model tends to be very, very different because these tend to be low volume, high complexity items. The manufacturing of them is tough. And the question is, how do you deal with the maintenance of it? Like in most cases, they don't just sell the robot. Like there are companies that sell a robot, but most of them don't just sell it. They offer it as like a service. And so essentially they're like renting you the robot or leasing it to you. And then you have some kind of a maintenance plan, but included with that, like next year, let's say that they do a bunch of upgrades. You can like get the upgrades included in your system and you're not having to buy a whole brand new one because it's an expensive piece of equipment. And so there are certain companies that have done very, very well with this robot as a service model. So like an example of one that we worked on is the Bear robot, right? Like so if you get the Bear food delivery robot, you're a restaurateur, it's more of a service-based model. So you don't buy it, you're essentially like buying it as a service, and then they put it in the restaurant, they get it all set up for you, and then they help deal with any issues that come up. And if it breaks, they send a service person out to fix it. It's all just part of like a service plan. So they do it that way. There's a few others, big ones that do it that way. It also, investors these days are really, they love software type models. They love seeing recurring revenue. Selling individual end product is tough to have recurring revenue unless you actually have some kind of back end service, some kind of a cloud service. So it's all about, oh, what's your ARR and what are you planning for that and how's that going to work? And so most of the business models that are being pursued these days have some ARR component to it, but it's usually the ARR piece is usually a software play, or it's some like full system maintenance play where they're getting ongoing maintenance from the thing that they've delivered.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but again, in many cases, I think about it again from a manufacturing standpoint, these tend to be products that are low volume, high complexity. And if the volumes are low, they're making them here in the US too. That's another item as well. Yeah.
So to your point about these being low volume, high complexity, robot systems are systems. They require not just all the component technologies, but the system design, how they come together. And the component technologies are evolving pretty quickly, from vision, AI, all the networking, the controllers. Are there specific, put your designer hat back on, are there particular design challenges when all those component technologies are evolving so quickly to sort of make, when you start the project to when you end the project? Is there a way to future proof that, so when it goes to market, it's not immediately obsolete?
Absolutely. Yeah, right. So software is a big one. The ability to have an over-the-air update mechanism and a mechanism that allows you to put new software in the system and unlock new capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there are certain traditional robot industries that are going to get worried soon, or they're starting to get worried soon, because the robot model for the way that you would deploy robotics in a factory setting, for example, the way that has been traditionally done for decades is you buy a robot from a manufacturer, you buy it through an integrator usually.
Right.
The integrator comes in, they set it up to do the task that you want it to do in the factory, and then they leave it alone. And then it just does that task all day, every day. And then if it breaks, you call the integrator, they come back and they fix the setup.
Right.
But it's basically an amalgamation of a bunch of off-the-shelf parts that were essentially screwed together to solve that specific manufacturing task. Right. So that is and let's say that you now want it to do something different that it was doing before. Suddenly they've got to come back in and reprogram the whole thing to do this other task, and that could take weeks, months, maybe, depending on if there's any additional mechanical fixturing that has to happen. And those have been popular in things like car factories, or certain manufacturing lines for pick and pack, for years. Right? There's no and they'll continue to be relevant there. I still think today, I have a friend that runs a company that builds robotic palletizers, right? So all they do is take boxes and then arrange them on pallets, and then take the boxes off of a conveyor belt, arrange them on pallets, and then wrap them, and then get them ready to go on a truck, right? And he goes out to the Midwest to these companies that are doing packaging, and he's just gleeful at how woefully low tech they are, right? And you would think, okay, here we're in Silicon Valley or whatever. It is, the Midwest is incredibly low tech in these packaging companies and stuff. We see this kind of stuff here, but go out to Iowa or Nebraska or whatever and go to a company that's, go to a soap factory or someplace. And, especially if it's not an ultra mega producer, it's a small producer. They're not very high tech. They have people packing the boxes and stuff. They don't have robots doing it.
Right.
So, and it's also evident too, if you ever go to, there's a great robot packaging trade show called Pack Expo, where all you see is all of the robot packaging technologies that are out in the market. It's a fantastic little show to go to. But when you go to a robot arm manufacturer, okay, with the typical method for how it does a task is it's all about programming repeatability. So it goes in, the arm gets it here, it moves it here, it moves it into some other fixture, some other thing. It does that over and over and over again. And it relies on, most of these systems have no vision guided feedback or anything. It's just go from here to here and do it repeatedly over and over and over and over, thousands and thousands of times with millimeter grade accuracy. And the way that they achieve that, at least in the automotive sector, is big, heavy metal robots that you can't get anywhere near because they kill you if they run into you. And that mechanical accuracy has come through mass. Okay. So now here we have, AI people. And what they're doing is they are taking the world's crappiest robot arm and making it do things that the big, heavy, gnarly ones do. They don't do it as deterministically as the big, heavy, gnarly ones do. But many tasks don't need highly precise repeatability. So if it's just putting a bottle of soap in a blister pack, okay, that doesn't need to be millimeter accurate. You just lay the soap in the blister pack and you're good to go, right? But you need to know that you've actually put it in there, right?
Right.
So I've had a kind of a funny joke that I've done where last couple of times I've gone to a robot trade show in a year or so, I'd be like, I don't want to buy a big, heavy, expensive robot arm. I want to buy the crappiest, cheapest, poor, least accurate arm you've got. Which one is that? Right. And of course, none of them were like, oh, no, you don't have any of those. Okay. And it turns out they're all going to have one. And it's coming. And there are some companies that are starting to produce these things. And there's people that are coming to us asking us all the time to make them ones from the ground up because they want to be able to do it really, really inexpensively. Because again, like a typical, UR5 arm could run you $35,000, right? A cheap, crappy one with really, that maybe it's reliable and it doesn't break, but it's made out of really inexpensive components that it doesn't weigh a lot. It's not terribly accurate, but can be visually servoed pretty reliably to the same location over and over again. That could be made for $1,000. And that's like a different animal. And the robot arm guys have completely missed the boat. Like they're still going after that high accuracy, big metal sale. So I would say the last big trend in robot arms was collaborative robotics. Ones that collaborate with you and they don't kill you when they bump into you. The next big one is really inexpensive, inaccurate collaborative robots that can then be used with AI and vision systems. And I'm still kind of waiting for those to appear in the market. I think it is only a matter of time for them to show up. People ask me to design them for them. We do some of that work, but I haven't yet seen like a major manufacturer like a KUKA or Universal making what I call the ultra cheap, crummy robot arm that doesn't break easily but isn't very accurate. So
that's a good tip. So for all our investor listeners, the future is retrograde.
It is. It is. The future is retrograde. Going back in time, So yeah.
So you said a lot of these don't require vision, which is ironic because you kind of undermine my next question, which is to zero in on vision a little bit and talk about how whether the vision factor, how that factors into the work that you're doing for robot developers. Are there challenges there today? I mean, does it become unnecessary with what the trend
No,
you're describing?
no. So vision is actually the way that you integrate AI and robotics,
Okay,
right?
we're
That
still
is
relevant.
so. Yeah, it's all about the glue that holds AI and robotics together is vision, right? And uh, you know, uh, you know, they have these things that are like called VLMs or VLAs, vision language action models. The key being vision, and then action being robot arm movement, right, or robot movement. There's a lot of really amazing work being done um, for how to train systems uh, using vision, to train AIs using vision to make a task repeatable, and then build a foundation model and then can be added on to do a new task. So the idea is you build an AI foundation model for a whole host of manipulation tasks. You then use that model in an embodiment with an arm that may be different than the one that they used for the original training of the model. And then you do additional training to just add the new tasks on with not a lot of repetitions, maybe 10 or 20 or 30 repetitions. And then suddenly now it can do that task. And so my favorite people that I watch very, very, very closely are there's this company up in San Francisco called Physical Intelligence, and they are making a foundation model for vision language action type robotics. And they have a phenomenal video of a robot where they have a robot that they've built for what they call doing tidying, right? So it's not like cleaning, but it's tidying. And they have a video where they brought a robot into 4 different Airbnbs that it had never seen before. So it had never been in these spaces, and said, tidy up the kitchen. And it just went and found the cabinets and put the dishes away and cleaned up the stuff in the sink. And it did it really well on all of the demos that they gave. They were also, another one was like make the bed, and it grabbed the sheets and changed the bed all around and picked up all the stuff on the floor and put it in the hamper. So it's tidying. It's not full on cleaning, but I think the most important part about it was they were dropping the robot into an environment that it had never seen before. So like, that's really amazing to me. That's groundbreaking. And then there was another one of the biggest problems of all is the training data problem of like, how do they collect a lot of this training data? And there's a thing, I guess I'm getting ready to, I've been working on a blog post. There's a bunch of research that was just published out of Meta of them using people wearing cameras and then doing manipulation tasks and then using that to train robot data so that a robot can do it.
Cool.
And I think if they figure that out, so there's not any specialized gear in order to do it, suddenly this stuff's going to accelerate even further. The humanoids and stuff are going to be able to do a lot more as we have more of this kind of data collected. So those are the areas that I follow pretty close and I get really excited about. And I wish more people would come ask us to build their mechanical embodiments. It's mostly a software problem. The AI is mostly a software issue. But if you're working on one of these things and you need help that understands the AI piece, call me, because I'm super enthused about the whole it's this whole meshing of like robotic hardware and AI and how do they all go together and how are the pieces going to get glued together?
Right.
Those things are really the items that are really hot on my hit parade every day. So
kind of this point of, AI is great, but it can't take my trash out. So that robotic embodiment will let the AI take your trash out, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I remember a number of years ago, I lived in a house that had a really steep driveway that was up to the street. And every Wednesday I had to go out and drag the bins up the hill to the street. And every day I thought I was going to just have a freaking heart attack dragging those bins. They're going to find my lifeless corpse by the garbage can, you know. And you know, we still don't even have that, you know. Like I think when's that coming? You know? So yeah, I'm hopeful that something like that will come in the future. So.
And that vision is a key enabler for your crappy robot arm, right?
That's right. That's right. The crappy robot arm could do it if it was attached to the right mechanical thing. Yeah.
So I think you need to start putting ads out saying, "Hey, do you need us to build crap for you?"
Right. That's right. Let's build the world's crappiest robot arm. You know, how crappy can it be?
We've been to the moon.
Yeah, exactly. And but people don't want to do that, right? Like they react funny too when I say, "Well, where's the really cheap, crummy one?" You know, and it's like, and you know, I almost kind of hope that they're gonna pull it out of some box, some haggard old thing that's like, you know, that they'd played with that didn't go anywhere, and they don't, right? No, none of them. They're all built. They're all based on like ultra precision, and then safety's a big item too, which is true, but safety's also less of a problem if the payloads that you're manipulating are small, which is things like the dishes in the kitchen or whatever. You know, I'm not moving around, you know, 100-pound boxes of screws. You know, if it's just simple task-oriented items, pick and pack tasks, the kind of arm that you need for that is not the kind that will kill you. So that's why I'm also skeptical too when I see people with humanoid robots and they're doing videos, and the humanoid robots are doing parkour or they're doing you know, handstands or somersaults or whatever, or dancing, break dancing. I don't need a robot to break dance. I need a robot that can do fine manipulation tasks, like pick up that wine glass and put it away without busting it. And it turns out most of them can't do that. And that's the reason why they're showing them breakdancing, because it looks cool. It's great PR, but it doesn't really serve any kind of like useful purpose. So
when you give them a wine glass, you're also going to see some breaking and popping. Right?
Probably, yeah. They'll be, but again, like I give my, you know, she's not 12 anymore, but my daughter, when she was like 10 or 12, and I say, "Hey, clean up the kitchen," right? She's going to break them things. That's an understanding, you know, it's a risk. You know, it's not going to be perfect every time, just like we people aren't perfect every time. So it's just, you know, hold the same expectation out for the robot that you would hold out for yourself. Again, unless you're putting it in some kind of precision environment where, you know, the repeatability has to be perfect 100% of the time. That's a different animal. And,
but we do joke about that, the you know, the really cheap, crappy robot. But in fact, a lot of your development is very concerned about how much each of those components within the robot costs, right?
You bet.
You have to really think about using those off-the-shelf components, correct?
You do. And actually, it turns out that the way that you really reduce cost in a robotic product is don't ship a robotic product that is built up of a bunch of off-the-shelf components. Take the expensive pieces that are really core to your success or failure and build bespoke versions of them that are specifically suited just to that task. So, you know, we have certain vendors that we partner with that I wouldn't recommend building a bespoke version of that to put in a robot project, because they do it very, very well. So we have, you know, for 3D cameras, we're partnered with Orbeck, and we're also partnered with Intel on the RealSense. Both those products work very well for 3D camera systems. Trying to cook your own from scratch is a mistake because they work very well, and for the price that you do, why try to cook it again? But a motor controller, I cannot tell you how many bespoke motor controllers we've built, because the type of motor they're controlling and what they're using it for and all that. There's off-the-shelf ones that do support 100 different kinds of motors, but they only need to support one in the one product that they're shipping. And the cost savings of a custom-made motor controller versus an off-the-shelf, it's an order of magnitude. So we do pretty good business in building custom motor controllers for robot products that are planning on shipping volumes of them, and it's like, if you're only going to ship, 10 or 20 of something, great, just make it out of off-the-shelf parts. If you think you're going to make thousands, then you need to go look at the parts that you can, make bespoke specific bits of that will give you significant cost savings in any kind of like scale.
Okay.
And so I would say that's another area that we provide a lot of assistance is identifying what components that you have in an off-the-shelf prototype that could be replaced to go at scale. Another example, we're partnered with NVIDIA. We're an NPN partner. NVIDIA has a wonderful ecosystem of companies that take their latest Jetson SOMs and their carrier boards for their Jetson SOMs to use them as a brain in a robotic project. The problem is that most of those carrier boards provide access to every possible thing that the SOM could ever do on that board. And maybe the customer's only using a camera and a thing, and they don't need all that extra stuff. So you could end up in a spot where the carrier board, in many cases, if you go out shopping, you'll find the carrier boards for most of the Jetson SOMs are actually more expensive than the SOM themselves. They could cost you a couple $1,000s for just the carrier board. And so that's a place where we get a lot of business, where people come and say, oh, we're doing a robotic product. It's got a Jetson SOM in it. We only need to use these features on the SOM. We don't need all of these other connectors and all these other capabilities. Can you make us a custom carrier board that just gives us access to the things that matter? And then the price of that carrier board goes way down. And so that suddenly makes putting NVIDIA as your CPU brain inside of your product much more palatable and much more capable. And that's one of the reasons why you see NVIDIA is doing a lot of things to like show off, how these are people that did do that, and here's the amazing results that they're achieving.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because my brain automatically thinks, oh, well, you want to use off-the-shelf components to make it cheaper, but that makes perfect sense in cases where you really need to create a bespoke product. Talking about NVIDIA, I actually wanted to bring up, I was looking around on your website and looking at some of the projects you've done, and saw the Kaya robot that was really focused on showing how hobbyist components could make the robotics more accessible. So, but from having talked to you before, it seemed like you were kind of poo-pooing the whole hobbyist components that might come out of an academic lab, and needing those components to be more reliable or more performant or what have you. So was there something about NVIDIA's approach that was an exception to the rule, or were there predictable speed bumps that you had to deal with those components?
So really, more than anything is, again, when I look at the big semiconductor companies that we work with all the time, like MediaTek or NVIDIA or Intel, they need some kind of a setup where they can get some user adoption, and where they can get the academics, the hobbyists, the home tinkerers, where they can get them to even like look at using their stuff for a possible solution. And so from a development perspective, development kits that support all kinds of interesting things that you could do with it are a fantastic starting point, right? because it makes it more accessible. You could just get this kit, build this thing. In the case of the Kaya robot, it was like, oh, we have the NVIDIA, Jetson Nano, but what am I going to do with it, right? What's an interesting project I could do with it? And so in that case, NVIDIA was like, hey, could you help us make a robot that the whole design is open source. It's 3D printable. You could go download all the parts, get the bill of materials off the web, and build one yourself in an afternoon. And and what's at the heart of it? It needs a Jetson in order to work. so you go get the Jetson Nano, and it's designed to fit in the thing. And now you can suddenly take your Jetson Nano and make it drive around and do interesting things. And I think having that kind of like developer ecosystem of interesting things that you can do, if you can't even do that, how can you start to visualize the next steps of how does that lead me to building a product? And I think what they want to do is they want to make sure that like they're in the boat before it leaves the dock. And that is a way to do it. So same way that we are building developer boards for MediaTek. We have a variety of developer boards we're building for them. How did we build them? We put them in a Raspberry Pi form factor. They're based on their Genio line of chipsets, but you're basically able to buy other off-the-shelf Raspberry Pi form factor add-ons and plug them into those boards, and they just work. So that again, it makes it more accessible to that developer ecosystem. And then when the person's like, okay, I want to make a real product about this, great, no problem. We can show you the path for how to go from there to there. It's okay to start with hobby parts. It's just not okay to try to ship a product with them.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
To your point, you spent enough time with us. We could talk all afternoon about this. This is a great topic with you. So I have one more question. We'll kind of wrap up, but we're curious. We're talking about you try to balance those off-the-shelf components to kind of control costs. Is that going to become more challenging with supply chain uncertainty?
I would say off-the-shelf parts does create a supply chain problem because again, you don't really know how things are going to evolve. Yeah. There are, when people get worried about supply chain, China supply chain is a common one that comes up. There are certain components that come from China that it doesn't matter if a 400% tariff is placed on them, you'll still be able to get them cheaper than you would be able to put them here. So you do need to spend some time looking at that. I would say China supply chain is a thing where, and this is in general, and this is another huge piece of advice with doing business in China. There are a lot of people that buy things from China, they put them in their products. They don't really ever get to know the supplier in any way. They don't really understand like where is it actually coming from. If you have components that are critical to your product success and they're coming from China, for sure, get on a plane and go meet them. Go there, build a relationship with them. Something I have from all my time in China and factories and other things, you cannot build something in a Chinese factory without spending a bunch of time in China, hanging out with them and building that relationship with them. And it's a relationship based on trust. And you're going to trust them to do the right thing, and they're going to call you when they run into a problem. And that trusting relationship is critical, I would say. And vice versa. They need to trust me that I'm going to pay my bills and that I'm going to give them the things that they need, and I'm going to work with their team to get it. I am baffled when I see entrepreneurs trying to stand up a Chinese factory on a product that they're working on, and they're trying to avoid going there. And it's like, that's a recipe for disaster. Just don't ever do that. Like, that's the one thing. And then same thing goes with supply chain items. you've got a motor manufacturer that you love, that you bought a few motors from them out of China. You think they're great, and you're going to use them long term. For God's sakes, don't just not go there. Go there, see their process, see how they do it, understand what their struggles and challenges are. So then that way, if there's a problem that'll come up in the future, you'll be aware of it.
Right.
You know, let's say they're having problems with the government or over there, or heavy metal, magnet acquisition or something. They'll tell you, and then you'll be ready for it if there's going to be a problem. So,
right. Right.
Yeah.
All right. That makes sense. Well, I agree with Dan. I could talk with you all day. It's always very interesting, Ted. So
yeah, would love to do this again sometime. This is awesome, and enjoyed meeting you both very much. And,
all right, you too. So
it's very cool.
Thank you very much for your input and insight, Ted. And thanks also to our viewers for joining us on Manufacturing Matters. So if anyone has any follow-up questions for Ted, please put them in the comments below, whether you're on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you're watching. And just a reminder that you can see past episodes of Manufacturing Matters podcast at our website, which is manufacturing-matters.com, or on your favorite podcast platform. So in the meantime, please hit favor, hit like, subscribe, and continue to tune in. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks.